Story 1. The Deep Waters of South Africa. I've never really shared this story outside of close friends and family, but I thought it might be interesting to some of you. This happened about 5 years ago, and it's still hard for me to believe it actually occurred. I'm not sure if anyone will believe me, but here it goes. I was part of a marine research team working on a project off the coast of South Africa. We were studying great white sharks, tagging them and tracking their movements. It was an exciting project, and we had been getting some incredible data. One day, we were about 20 miles offshore in relatively deep waters. The weather was perfect, and the ocean was calm, almost eerily so. We had just finished tagging a particularly large great white, and were celebrating a successful day when our boat suddenly rocked violently. Everyone looked around, confused. The sea was calm, so what could have caused such a huge disturbance? Before we could react, it happened again, but this time it was more forceful. I remember the water around the boat churning and frothing like something massive was moving beneath us. Our first thought was a whale, but what surfaced next was no whale. At first, we only saw a shadow, an impossibly large shadow that seemed to stretch on forever. Then, the head of this monstrous creature broke the surface. It was a shark, but not just any shark. It was a Megalodon. I know it sounds crazy, but the sheer size of this thing was undeniable. Its head alone was bigger than our entire boat. The dorsal fin towered above us like a skyscraper. I remember feeling a mix of awe and absolute terror. This was supposed to be an extinct species, a relic of the prehistoric past, and yet here it was, staring us down with cold black eyes. For what felt like an eternity, the Megalodon just hovered there, half submerged, as if it was studying us. Then, with a flick of its massive tail, it disappeared beneath the waves, leaving a whirlpool in its wake. We were all stunned, struggling to process what we just witnessed. The rest of the crew wanted to get back to shore immediately, but I insisted we try to get some evidence. We had cameras and equipment, and I was determined to prove what we saw. Unfortunately, the Megalodon didn't reappear. We stayed out there for hours, but there was no sign of it. When we got back to shore and shared our story, most people were skeptical. We were ridiculed by some and ignored by others. Without concrete evidence, our account was dismissed as either a hoax or a hallucination caused by overwork and too much sun. 5 years have passed since that fateful day, but the memories are as vivid as ever. After our initial sighting of the Megalodon, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled upon something far beyond our understanding, something that defied the very laws of nature. In the weeks that followed, I became obsessed with finding more information. I spent countless hours poring over old maritime legends and obscure scientific journals. The deeper I delved, the more I realized that our encounter wasn't as unique as I had initially thought. Reports of colossal sharks, some dating back centuries, began to paint a picture of a creature that had always existed in the shadows of our awareness. One particularly haunting account came from a whaling ship in the early 19th century. The crew described a massive shark that attacked their vessel, leaving behind deep gouges in the hull and taking several crew members with it. The descriptions matched what we had seen, an enormous, prehistoric beast with a voracious appetite. My obsession took a toll on my personal life. Friends and colleagues distanced themselves, unable to understand my fixation. The ridicule we faced after our initial report only fueled my determination to prove the Megalodon's existence. I began organizing new expeditions, each one more ambitious than the last. It was on one of these expeditions that we had another encounter, one that would leave a permanent scar on my psyche. We were about 50 miles off the coast of Durban, in waters known for their rich marine biodiversity. The crew was smaller this time, just a few trusted colleagues who shared my obsession. The day started like any other, with calm seas and clear skies. We were using advanced sonar equipment, hoping to pick up any unusual readings. Hours passed without incident, and the mood on the boat grew tense. Just as the sun began to set, our sonar picked up something massive, something moving at a speed that defied all logic. Before we could react, the boat was hit with a force that nearly capsized it. Equipment flew across the deck, and we struggled to regain our footing. The water around us frothed violently, and then we saw it, the Megalodon, even larger than the one we had encountered before. This time it didn't just observe us. It attacked with a ferocity that left no doubt about its intentions. The boat groaned under the strain as the Megalodon rammed it repeatedly. Panic set in as we realized we were powerless against this ancient predator. Our attempts to capture footage were futile in the chaos. In the midst of the attack, one of my colleagues was thrown overboard. I watched in horror as the Megalodon circled him, its immense body creating a vortex that pulled him under. His screams were drowned out by the roar of the water, and then he was gone, swallowed by the abyss. We managed to send out a distress signal before the Megalodon disappeared into the depths. Rescue teams arrived hours later, but by then, the ocean had reclaimed its secrets. The loss of my colleague weighed heavily on me, a stark reminder of the dangers we faced in our quest for knowledge. The aftermath of that encounter was a blur of media scrutiny and official investigations. We were questioned extensively, our every word dissected and analyzed. The footage we had managed to capture was inconclusive, showing only glimpses of the Megalodon's massive form and the chaos of the attack. In the end, the authorities labeled our account as an unfortunate accident, attributing the damage to an unidentified large marine animal. The loss of my colleague was recorded as a tragic drowning. Our credibility was further eroded, and the scientific community distanced itself from us. I retreated from public life, consumed by guilt and fear. The ocean, once a source of wonder and discovery, had become a place of nightmares. I couldn't shake the feeling that the Megalodon was still out there watching and waiting. Years later, I still have vivid nightmares of those encounters. The Megalodon's cold, black eyes haunt me, a reminder of the ancient predator lurking beneath the waves. Despite the ridicule and disbelief, I know what I saw. The ocean is vast and unexplored, and there are secrets it holds that we may never fully understand. To anyone reading this, I urge you to be cautious. The sea is a place of mystery and danger, and we are mere visitors in its domain. Respect its power and remember that there are creatures out there that defy our understanding. Stay safe, and if you ever encounter something you can't explain, trust your instincts. The world is full of wonders and horrors that we have yet to discover. Story 2. The Haunting of the Gulf of Mexico. I've been reading through some of these unbelievable stories, and I finally decided to share my own. I've only told a few people about this, and most of them think I'm crazy or that I was just tired and seeing things, but I swear this happened. Here's my story. About 3 years ago, I was working on an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. The job was demanding, but I enjoyed the sense of camaraderie with my colleagues and the unique environment. Working on an oil rig is like living in a small, isolated world suspended over the endless expanse of the ocean. The constant hum of machinery, the salty sea air, and the rhythmic sway of the rig became my daily reality. I was on the night shift, which was usually pretty quiet. Our rig was located about 70 miles off the coast, far from any shipping lanes or busy areas. It was just us, the vast ocean, and the occasional visiting supply ship. Life on the rig was a strange mix of routine and unpredictability, and while nights were generally calm, the isolation could sometimes feel eerie. It was around 2 a.m. on a calm, clear night, the kind of night that almost made you forget you were miles from land. The stars were scattered across the sky like a field of diamonds, and the moon cast a silvery glow over the tranquil sea. I was up on the main deck, taking a break and enjoying the cool breeze. The sea was incredibly still, almost glass-like, which is rare out there. Usually there was always some wave action, a reminder of the restless nature of the ocean. But that night, it was as if the sea itself had paused, holding its breath. I was staring out into the darkness, appreciating the serenity, when I noticed something strange. The water around the rig began to ripple, like something massive was moving beneath the surface. At first, I thought it was just a whale or a school of fish, but the ripples were too large and too rhythmic. Whales and schools of fish create disturbances, sure, but this was different. The pattern and intensity of the ripples suggested something far more significant. I leaned over the railing, trying to get a better look. The water's clarity was decent, but the darkness made it difficult to see anything more than vague shapes and shadows. My heart started to race as I squinted into the inky blackness. That's when I saw it, a gigantic shadow moving just below the surface, circling the rig. I called out to a couple of my buddies who were on the shift with me. "Hey Mike, Dave, come check this out." They came over, and we all watched in stunned silence as the shadow moved closer. The sheer size of it was beyond anything we had ever seen. Then, it surfaced. Breaking through the water with a force that shook the rig, the creature's head emerged. It was a shark, but not like any shark I'd ever seen. The sheer scale of it was mind-boggling. The water foamed and churned around its massive body, creating waves that slapped against the steel legs of the rig. It was easily 3 times the size of a great white, with rows of jagged teeth and eyes that seemed to glint in the dim light. I realized, with a jolt of terror, that we were looking at a megalodon. The creature's size was almost incomprehensible. The head alone was massive, dwarfing anything around it. Its eyes were cold and unblinking, giving it an almost mechanical appearance. I had read about megalodons in textbooks and seen their fossilized teeth in museums, but seeing one in the flesh was a different matter entirely. The megalodon's presence was both awe-inspiring and utterly terrifying. Its rough, scarred skin bore the marks of countless battles, hinting at the brutal life it must have led. The sheer size of it was mind-boggling. Its dorsal fin alone was nearly as tall as our rig's main platform. The megalodon circled us slowly, almost deliberately, as if it was inspecting this strange metal structure in its territory. We watched, paralyzed by a mix of fear and fascination. The rig, a massive structure in its own right, suddenly felt small and vulnerable. The megalodon's movements were slow and deliberate, each pass bringing it closer. I could feel the vibrations through the steel deck with each powerful sweep of its tail. For a few minutes, none of us moved or spoke. We were all frozen, a mix of awe and primal fear keeping us rooted to the spot. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the megalodon dove back into the depths, its massive tail causing a wave that rocked the rig. The sound of its tail slapping the water was like a thunderclap, reverberating through the steel of the rig. We watched as it disappeared, the water gradually calming in its wake. It felt as if the sea was exhaling a sigh of relief, returning to its previous state of eerie stillness. We were left in stunned silence. Eventually, we gathered ourselves and tried to make sense of what we'd seen. The rest of the night was a blur of frantic conversations and wild speculation. We talked about it for the rest of the night, but there was no doubt in our minds. We had encountered a living megalodon. The reality of it sank in slowly, the sheer improbability of what we had witnessed clashing with the undeniable evidence of our own eyes. We went over every detail, trying to rationalize the impossible. When we reported it to our superiors, they laughed it off. They said we were overtired or that it was just a large whale. The dismissiveness stung, but we knew what we had seen. But I know what I saw. I've been around marine life my entire career, and this was no whale. The distinctive features, the sheer size, it was unmistakable. Our insistence only seemed to solidify their skepticism, and soon the story became a sort of inside joke among the crew. The frustration of not being believed was palpable, but we couldn't shake the image of that enormous shark from our minds. Since that night, I've always felt a bit uneasy working on the rig, especially during the night shifts. The ocean is vast and largely unexplored, and who knows what ancient creatures still lurk in its depths. Every shadow, every ripple, seemed to hold a potential threat. The vastness of the ocean, once a source of wonder, had taken on a more sinister aspect. I found myself constantly scanning the water, my mind replaying that encounter over and over. The feeling of vulnerability was inescapable. I still think about that encounter often, especially when I'm out on the water. It's a humbling reminder that, despite all our technology and knowledge, there are still mysteries out there waiting to be discovered. The image of that enormous shark, its cold eyes and powerful body, is something I can't shake. It serves as a stark reminder of how little we truly understand about the depths of the ocean. I've come to respect the ocean even more, knowing it harbors secrets and creatures beyond our wildest imaginations. The encounter changed me. I used to love the ocean, reveling in its beauty and mystery. Now, there's always a part of me that's on edge, waiting for something to emerge from the depths. It's a fear that's hard to explain, rooted in a primal recognition of being completely at the mercy of something far more powerful than myself. The ocean, once a place of solace, had become a realm of potential danger, where anything could happen. So, to anyone reading this, I urge you to be cautious. The sea is a place of mystery and danger, and we are mere visitors in its domain. Respect its power, and remember that there are creatures out there that defy our understanding. The next time you're out on the water, take a moment to appreciate the unknown, because sometimes it's closer than you think. The ocean's depths hold wonders and terrors alike, and we must tread carefully in its domain. Nodder, Story 3. The Terror of the Mariana Trench. I've been hesitant to share this story because it sounds so unbelievable, but after reading some of the encounters here, I feel like I'm not alone. This happened about 2 summers ago, and it still gives me chills just thinking about it. It was a warm, humid night when I finally mustered the courage to write this down. The memories are as vivid as they were 2 years ago, and even now, my hands tremble at the keyboard. I hope by sharing this, I can find some semblance of peace and maybe help others understand the mysteries that lie beneath the ocean's surface. My friends and I love deep-sea fishing, and we try to go on a big trip at least once a year. We usually head out to the Mariana Trench, where the waters are deep and the fishing is great. Planning these trips is something we look forward to for months. We would spend weeks preparing, checking our gear, and ensuring everything was in perfect condition. This particular trip started like any other, with high hopes and a boat full of gear. We were excited and optimistic, anticipating the thrill of the catch and the camaraderie that came with it. The anticipation was palpable as we left the harbor. The sun was shining, and the ocean was a stunning shade of blue. We joked and laughed, discussing the big catches we hoped to make. The air was filled with the salty scent of the sea, and the gentle rocking of the boat as it cut through the waves was soothing. We had been out for a couple of days and were having decent luck with our catches. Each fish we reeled in added to our growing sense of satisfaction. The routine was familiar and comforting. Cast, wait, reel in. Each catch brought a surge of excitement. We shared stories and beers, feeling invincible in our small floating fortress. On the 3rd night, we decided to stay out late and try our hand at some night fishing. The sea was unusually calm, with a clear sky full of stars above us. The peacefulness was almost surreal, and we were confident it was a perfect night for a big catch. The darkness enveloped us, creating a sense of isolation that was both thrilling and unnerving. It was around midnight when things started to get strange. One of our lines suddenly went taut, and the reel began to scream. Whatever was on the other end was massive and powerful. The sound pierced the quiet night, instantly grabbing everyone's attention. We all jumped into action, thinking we had hooked the catch of a lifetime. The boat's deck became a flurry of activity as we scrambled to control the line. But as we struggled to bring it in, the line snapped with a sound like a gunshot. We were all a bit bummed out, but also excited by the thought of such a big fish. The idea that there was something enormous out there, just beyond our reach, kept our adrenaline pumping. We reset the lines and kept fishing, but the atmosphere had changed. There was an eerie silence, and we all felt a bit on edge. The sea, once a source of joy, now seemed to hide unknown threats. We exchanged uneasy glances, trying to shake off the growing sense of unease. A couple of hours later, just as we were considering calling it a night, the boat rocked violently. At first, we thought it was just a rogue wave, but then it happened again, and this time it felt like something had hit us. Hard. The impact was jarring, nearly knocking us off our feet. The boat's lights flickered, casting ghostly shadows on the water. I looked over the side of the boat and saw a massive shadow moving beneath the surface. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. The shape was unmistakable. This was a shark, but far larger than any great white. The dorsal fin alone was taller than any of us. Its movement was slow and deliberate, exuding a sense of power and menace. In a mix of awe and fear, we watched as the creature surfaced. The moonlight glinted off its enormous body, revealing the unmistakable features of a megalodon. Its head was huge, with rows of teeth that looked capable of slicing our boat in half. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying, a relic of a time long past suddenly brought to life. The scale of the creature defied comprehension, each detail amplifying the horror of its presence. The Megalodon circled us, its movements slow and deliberate. It seemed to be studying us, almost as if it was deciding whether we were worth the effort. We all stood frozen, barely daring to breathe. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat, loud in my ears. The sheer size of the creature was overwhelming, its presence imposing and ancient. Its eyes, cold and black, seemed to bore into us, assessing our threat level. As we stood there, time seemed to stretch. The Megalodon's cold, dark eyes were locked on us, its enormous body gliding effortlessly through the water. The tension was unbearable. We knew that if it decided to attack, there would be nothing we could do. The boat, once our sanctuary, now felt like a fragile, vulnerable speck in the vast ocean. After what felt like an eternity, the Megalodon finally dove back into the depths, leaving a whirlpool in its wake. The water churned violently for a moment before slowly calming. The stillness that followed was almost as unnerving as the encounter itself. We immediately started the boat's engine and headed back to shore, not daring to look back. When we told people what we had seen, most of them laughed it off or suggested we had seen a whale or were just sleep-deprived. But those of us on that boat knew what we saw. It was a megalodon, and it was very real. The dismissive reactions of others only added to our frustration and fear. We had experienced something extraordinary, but it seemed we were alone in believing it. The skepticism we faced made us question our own sanity at times, but the memory of the encounter remained vivid and undeniable. Since that night, I've been wary of the ocean. It's a beautiful place, but also full of mysteries and dangers that we can't even begin to understand. The memory of that encounter haunts me, a constant reminder of the unknown lurking beneath the waves. The ocean's vastness now feels like a realm of hidden threats rather than endless possibilities. The once comforting sound of waves lapping against the hull now sends shivers down my spine. I'm not sure if I'll ever go deep-sea fishing again. The thrill that once drove me to the open water has been replaced by a deep-seated fear. The encounter with the Megalodon has forever altered my perception of the sea. The thought of encountering such a creature again is enough to keep me firmly on dry land. Even as I write this, I can still see its massive form in my mind's eye, a chilling reminder of the ancient predator that lurks in the depths.